The sky was dark and full of smoke. Buildings were broken, streets were silent. Everything looked dead, cold, and lonely. The world had fallen after the war. Only a few people were left. And most had become selfish and cruel. But one man, named Jace, still kept something rare: kindness. Jace was walking slowly through the ruins of an old city. His clothes were torn, his boots were dirty, and his body was weak. He had not eaten in 2 days. In his pocket, he had only one thing left: a single energy bar. He was saving it, planning to eat it that night and maybe survive one more day. Suddenly, he heard a small sound behind a broken wall. He stopped, hand on his knife, ready to fight if needed. But the sound came again. Wasn't a threat. It was a soft whimper, like a child crying, slowly, carefully. Jace moved closer. He peeked behind the wall and saw her. She was small, skinny, and shaking. Her skin was pale purple, and her big eyes were glowing faintly. Her arms were wrapped around her legs, and she looked terrified. She was not human. She was an alien child, maybe no older than 5 or 6. She looked up at him with fear, but didn't run. Jace looked at her and felt his heart sink. She was starving, just like him, maybe worse. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his last food. He looked at it, then at her, and without saying a word, he opened the wrapper and handed it to her. She stared at the food like it was treasure. Her hands moved slowly, carefully, as if she didn't believe it was real. Then she took it, bit into it, and tears fell from her eyes. She looked at Jace, confused and grateful. He gave her a weak smile and sat down beside her. For the next few minutes, they didn't speak. She ate. Slowly, as if trying to make it last, Jace just watched her, feeling strangely calm. He didn't know who she was or where she came from. But in that moment, none of it mattered. He had helped someone, and that was enough. After she finished eating, she reached out her hand. Jace hesitated, then gently took it. Her hand was cold and soft. She held onto his fingers like a scared child holding a rope. Then, she did something unexpected. She leaned forward and pressed her forehead to his arm. It felt like a silent thank you, and just like that, she turned and ran. Before he could say anything, she disappeared into the ruins. Jace stood up and looked around, but she was gone. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into years. Jace never saw the little alien girl again. Sometimes he thought he had dreamed it. Other times he wondered if she had even survived. But deep inside, he always hoped she was alive somewhere. He never forgot her face. Years passed, and the world slowly rebuilt itself. Jace lived in a quiet village now. Far from the old ruins, he grew older, kept to himself, and often watched the stars. He had nothing much, just a small home, simple tools, and old memories. But one cold evening, something strange happened. There was a knock at his door. It was soft but clear, 3 knocks. Then silence. Jace wasn't expecting anyone. He grabbed his old coat, walked to the door, and opened it. There, standing in the doorway, was someone tall, a figure wrapped in a dark cloak. Face hidden by shadows, but those glowing eyes, they looked familiar. The figure stepped forward and pulled back the hood. Jace's heart skipped a beat. It was her. The little alien girl, now grown. She looked strong, beautiful, and powerful, but her eyes still held the same gentle glow. She looked at him and said, in soft, perfect English, "You gave me your last food." Jace couldn't speak. She stepped forward again, her voice calm but serious. "Now I have returned to repay your kindness." And behind her, in the darkness, something strange moved, a ship floating silently. With symbols glowing on its side, Jace had no idea what was coming next. But he knew one thing: his act of kindness had changed something big. And this was only the beginning. The market was loud and full of smoke. packed with traders, thieves, and hungry travelers. Yet one strange customer stood out that day. She wore a dark cloak and kept her head low. Walking through the dusty path between alien fruit stands and metal scraps, people didn't notice her at first until she left behind something odd, a box of food. Untouched and sealed, quietly placed in front of an old human man begging near a trash barrel. The man looked around, confused, then grabbed the box with shaking hands. Inside were perfect rations, fresh water packs, and something else wrapped in silver foil. A food bar. He unwrapped it quickly and bit in, tears falling from his eyes as he chewed from a rooftop above. The cloaked girl watched without a word, her glowing eyes hidden under the hood. She didn't stay. By the time the man looked up to thank someone, she was gone. That wasn't the only time it happened. Across the outer colonies, rumors began to spread. A silent figure was leaving food, medicine, and sometimes even power cells for the poor. Only humans ever received it. And always there was a strange, glowing mark nearby, drawn on the walls, the ground, or scratched into broken metal. Some called it a gift from ghosts. Others whispered about a guardian. No one knew who she was, but one soldier heard the story and froze. Jace had returned to his quiet life far away from the old ruins. But the memories never left him. One night, while listening to trade reports from across the sectors, he heard something that made him sit up. A merchant in Sector 7 reported a small town was saved from hunger after a cloaked alien dropped a full crate of supplies. The merchant had laughed, saying she just left it there and vanished. Jace felt his heart beat faster. Then the merchant added, one strange thing, though, the crate had a symbol on it. Like two curved lines meeting in the middle, Jace stood up slowly. He walked to his drawer, opened it, and pulled out an old stone he had kept all these years. The glow had faded long ago, but the symbol was still there, two curved lines touching. Like a heart, he stared at it for a long time. It couldn't be her, he told himself. But something inside him said it was. The next morning, Jace began to ask questions. He traded old gear just to get names, rumors, and directions. Most people thought he was chasing a myth, but he didn't care. He followed the trail for days, moving from dusty ports to crowded cities. And everywhere he went, he found the same things: silent help left behind for humans, always marked with sin. That glowing sign. Then came the night he saw her again. It was in a busy market, lit by broken lamps and cheap neon signs. Jace was walking past a crowded stall when he saw a hooded figure placing something beside a small human child begging near a garbage pile. It was a food bar, and her fingers were the same, thin, light purple, with a small scar across the knuckle. Jace moved quickly, pushing through the crowd. But she turned before he could reach her. Their eyes met for just 1 second. He froze. Those glowing silver eyes, he knew them. Before he could speak, she was gone, slipping into the crowd like smoke. Jace chased her down the alley, heart pounding, calling out, but the alley was empty. Only the child remained, holding the food and smiling. Jace knelt beside the boy, still breathing hard. "Did she say anything to you?" he asked. The child shook his head, then pointed at the wall. Jace looked up and saw it, the glowing heart symbol, fresh and bright. That night, Jace didn't sleep. He sat under the broken light in his room, holding the old stone in one hand and a new food wrapper in the other. She was alive. She remembered him. And she was doing something far bigger than he had imagined. He didn't know what her plan was. But one thing was clear: she had changed, and maybe, just maybe, she was preparing for something more, something that involved him too. The stars blinked quietly over the frozen valley. Far above, a single satellite floated in the dark sky, forgotten and broken by time. Its signal lights were dead, its system silented till one small panel blinked to life. Inside, a soft voice played on loop. "Thank you, brave one," it said, over and over again. The message was faint, hidden in static, almost like a whisper from the past. No one heard it, not yet, until a passing human scout ship picked it up by accident. The pilot, a young man named Kellen, stared at the signal in confusion. It was in an old Earth language used during the early wars, but the strange part was that the voice was not human. It was light, soft, and clearly alien. He replayed it 5 times. Just to be sure, every time it ended the same way. "Thank you, brave one." Then silence. Kellen felt a chill. This wasn't just a glitch. He locked onto the signal and followed it to the old satellite as he approached his ship's sensors. Picked up something strange. The satellite had a recent energy spike. Someone or something had been there recently. He docked carefully and entered the silent metal shell. Dust floated through the air like snow. Screens were cracked and panels were rusted. But in the very center, carved into the metal wall, was a symbol he didn't understand. 2 curved lines, meeting in the middle, glowing faintly blue. He touched it without thinking. The lights blinked again, and the voice played one more time. This time louder, "Thank you, brave one." Suddenly, the signal stopped, and the power inside the satellite went out again. Everything turned dark. Kellen backed away slowly, unsure what he had just found before leaving. He noticed something placed gently on one of the broken consoles. It was a small food bar wrapper, old, silver, and marked with the same glowing symbol. He took it back to his ship. He didn't understand what it meant, but he couldn't shake the feeling that someone had left it there for a reason. He reported everything to command, but no one believed it was real. They said he was tired, imagining things. But that night, as he sat in his ship's small sleeping pod, he saw something strange on the outside of his window, drawn in the frost, too. Curved lines meeting like a heart. Then, just for a second, a figure appeared in the darkness. Standing on the ship's hull without any suit, a cloaked form, eyes glowing silver, staring straight at him. Before he could move, she was gone. No sign, no sound. Only the shape left behind in frost. He didn't sleep after that, and he wasn't the only one across the galaxy. Small things began to happen. Machines left for. Dead started working again. Old soldiers found messages written in the dust of their empty rooms. Humans who once gave kindness years ago, maybe decades, were suddenly getting help from nowhere. One woman found a crate of medicine on her porch. After trying to treat sick children with herbs, another man woke up to find a shield generator running beside his hut. Though no one had ever installed one, and always, without fail, there was a mark left behind. Glowing and warm, Jace heard about it too. He sat alone, watching reports scroll across a cracked screen. It was happening everywhere, and it was all connected. He held the old stone tighter in his hand. "I think she's sending messages," he whispered to himself. But why now? He didn't know she was preparing something. He didn't know others were watching her, trying to stop her. He only knew one thing: she was back. And the galaxy was about to remember what one small act of kindness could do. The fire crackled softly in the corner, but the room stayed cold. Jay sat in his chair, staring at the walls like they might speak. It had been years since he last held a weapon. Years since anyone called him a soldier. Now people called him something else, the Broken One. He didn't care anymore. Life had taken everything from him except his memories. And one of those memories had started knocking again. He lived in the edge town of Archon's dust. Hey. Place where hope came to die. Old miners, ex-soldiers, and runaways filled the broken houses. There were no patrols, no rules, just silence and slow days. Jace liked it that way. No one asked questions. No one looked at the stone he wore around his neck. They just let him be. But something had changed. He noticed it first when he stepped outside one morning and saw the symbols scratched into his door. Two curved lines just like before. Faint but glowing blue under the rising sun, he stared at it for a long time, then wiped it away with his sleeve. He told himself it was just a prank. But his hands were shaking when he returned inside. The next night, someone left a small box on his doorstep. It was plain and sealed with no markings. Inside, he found food, fresh, warm, still steaming. Exactly like the one he had given that little alien girl so long ago. He sat down with it, smelled it, then laughed. A soft, dry laugh that hurt his chest. "Are you really back?" He asked the empty room. No answer came, but the food stayed warm for hours. Later that week, trouble arrived. 3 men from the east towns, rough and greedy, came looking for someone to rob. They saw Jace limping near the trade cart and followed him home. He barely made it inside before the door broke open. They knocked him to the floor and demanded food. Credits or tech, Jace had none of it. Just old clothes and silent anger. One man raised a knife, ready to end him right there. Then everything stopped. The light in the room flickered, turned blue, then went out. A soft humming sound filled the air. Followed by silence, the men turned. A round end froze. A figure stood in the broken doorway. Completely still. She was tall now, wrapped in a black cloak. Her face was hidden. But her glowing eyes cut through the dark like moons. Without a word, she raised her hand. A pulse of light knocked the men to the ground in a blink. They screamed and ran, falling over each other to escape. Jace stared, breathing hard. Not from fear, but from something else. Something like recognition. She stepped forward slowly, reached out and placed a small object in his hand. It was another food bar, wrapped in silver, and under it a folded note. He opened it with shaking fingers. "You gave your last," the note read. "I give you my first." He looked up, but she was gone. Not a single sound had come from her boots. Not a single footprint remained in the dust. Only the glowing blue symbol was left behind on his wall. Drawn with a single stroke of her finger, for the first time in years, Jace felt something move. Inside him, not pain, not sadness, something different. A question. What had she become? Why was she doing all this? And how many more had she helped in secret? He sat by the window all night, holding the food bar, watching the stars, and in the silence he remembered her small, shaking hands, taking that first bite so long ago. She had been a dying child once. Now she was something else, and whatever she was doing, it had only just begun. It started with a shadow falling across the window. Jace didn't move at first, thinking it was just a passing bird or maybe the old satellite turning above. But the shadow stayed, motionless, waiting. He stood up slowly, his knees cracking, heart beating harder than it had in years. He opened the door, expecting the wind, maybe another gift, maybe nothing at all. What he found instead made him stop breathing. She was standing there in the street. Not a memory, not a dream reel. Her hood was down this time. The glow from her silver eyes lit up the dust around her like stars on a quiet night. She didn't speak, not at first. They just stared at each other. The silence between them felt heavy, like it carried all the years they had both survived. Then, without warning, she dropped to one knee. Her head bowed low. Jace blinked, unsure what he was seeing. This tall, powerful alien, once a helpless child kneeling before a broken man. He stepped forward slowly, unsure what to say. She raised her head, voice low and steady. "You gave without asking," she said. "And now, I offer everything." Jace didn't understand what she meant, not yet, before he could ask. A blast tore through the sky. A bolt of red light smashed into the building across the street. The explosion lit up the town like a second sun. She stood up fast, grabbed Jace by the arm, and pulled him toward the alley. They ran, stumbling through broken trash bins and loose wires. Behind them, the air screamed with more blasts. Jace had no idea what was happening, but she did. At the edge of town, hidden under a metal plate, was a small shuttle. She opened it with a code burned into her palm. Inside, she ordered. Jace hesitated only a second, then followed. As the door closed behind them, the noise outside faded. She touched the console, and the ship lifted quietly into the air. They didn't speak for several minutes. Jace sat across from her, watching. Her face, older now, more defined, but still carrying that quiet sadness in her eyes. He finally broke the silence. "Why now?" he asked. She looked at him, tired but calm. "Because they found me," she whispered. "And now they'll come for you too." She explained everything in short, careful words. How she had survived, trained, and grown strong. How she found others like her abandoned, broken, forgotten by the galaxy. Together, they had helped people, in secret, moving in the dark. All of it had stayed hidden until recently. Now, someone powerful had noticed. And they wanted her silenced. "They don't understand why I help humans," she said. "They think I'm dangerous because of it?" Jace nodded slowly. "You are dangerous," he said quietly, "but not in the way they think." A faint smile touched her lips. She reached into a pouch and pulled out something small. It was a metal charm, shaped like the food bar he once gave her. On it, she had carved the same symbol, two curves meeting in the middle. Jace touched it gently. "That little thing changed your whole life?" he asked. She looked at him and said, "No, you did." Then she leaned back and closed her eyes. "We're not safe yet," she said. "They'll follow us soon. And I don't know how long we have." Jace looked out the shuttle window at the stars. Everything had changed in just a few hours. He wasn't just a forgotten man anymore. He was now tied to something bigger, something dangerous, and something beautiful. He turned back to her and asked, "What do we do next?" She opened her eyes and said one word: "Fight." The stars were no longer beautiful. They were eyes watching from the dark. Jace leaned against the cold wall of the stolen shuttle, staring at the star map blinking softly before him. It showed red marks, enemy tracking points, search drones, warning zones. They were everywhere. Closing in fast, she stood beside him. Silent, still, her hand resting on the edge of the console. Her cloak had been torn during the escape, and her face showed signs of exhaustion. But her eyes had not dimmed. If anything, they burned brighter for the past 3 days. They had jumped between planets, hiding in junkyards, caves, and old mining tunnels everywhere they stopped. Sensors picked up a signal just hours later. Someone was chasing them, not blindly, but with purpose, and Jace knew why. It wasn't just about her anymore. It was about what she carried inside. Her was something the galaxy feared, not a weapon, not a virus, not even some alien power. What she carried was truth, a memory passed down from her ancestors, one that showed humans and her kind once stood side by side. It was buried history, erased from records, but she had proof. And now, those in power wanted to bury her too. Jace sat across from her inside a dusty cave on a red moon. He watched her place a small crystal into a device that lit up the dark. Like a sun, images floated in the air, old carvings, ancient cities, murals of humans and aliens working together. "What is all this?" Jace asked softly. She looked up, her voice calm but fierce. "This is the truth they fear." Jace stared at the floating images, feeling something stir inside him. His past, his losses, his pain, they all led to this moment. "You want to share this with the galaxy?" he asked. She nodded. "If people see this, they'll know we were never meant to be enemies." Before he could answer, a warning light flashed on her wristband. They were found again. No time left. She grabbed the crystal, shut down the device, and reached for his arm. "We can't run anymore," she said. "We have to go straight through them." Jace looked at her, surprised. "Are you sure?" She looked at him and gave the smallest smile. "I'm done hiding." The shuttle burst from the cave. Flying low over the rocks, enemy ships spotted them within seconds. Blaster fire cut through the sky, lighting it red. Jace held the controls steady while she handled the shields. He had no idea how they were still alive, but he knew why he was still flying. Not for survival, but for her. She gave him coordinates, not a military base, not a rebel outpost. It's a signal tower, an old one built before the war, still strong enough to send a message across every system if activated. "That's the place," she said. "If we upload the memory crystal there, it will go everywhere." They were getting closer. But so were the enemy ships. One blast rocked the shuttle. Another cut the engine power in half. Jace kept flying, smoke filling the cockpit. His hands tight on the controls. She placed the crystal into a slot on her arm, linking it to the tower signal code. When they landed, they would only have minutes, maybe less. Jace turned to her, sweat on his brow. "You sure it's worth it?" She nodded slowly. "It's bigger than us." And then she looked at him. Really looked. "You gave me a future when you gave me that food bar," she whispered. "Now let me give the future to everyone else." The shuttle dove toward the signal tower, alarms screaming, metal shaking. Jace didn't know if they would survive the landing, but deep inside, he felt something he hadn't felt in years. Purpose. They were no longer running. They were fighting for something that mattered. And they were doing it together. The sky didn't welcome them, tried to kill them. As the shuttle crashed through the clouds toward the signal tower, fire spread across its wings like angry lightning. Alarms screamed, metal groaned, and sparks burst from the controls. Jace didn't let go, even as smoke filled the cabin. Beside him, she stayed calm, one hand holding the armrest, the other protecting the glowing crystal embedded in her chestplate. They had come too far to turn back. The shuttle hit the ground hard, sliding across the cracked platform of the ancient tower. Metal tore like paper, and the nose of the ship slammed into the stone wall with a deep, final crunch. Silence followed, broken only by the sound of wind blowing ash through the air. Jace blinked through the smoke, his body aching, blood dripping from his forehead. He coughed and looked over. She was still there, eyes glowing softly. Her body pinned but breathing. She pushed the broken door open and pulled herself out first. Then she helped Jace, her movements slow but sure. Ahead of them stood the old transmitter. Tall and forgotten, vines had grown over the base, and the panels were covered in dust, but the core still glowed faintly with blue light. It was alive, just like them. Enemy ships appeared in the sky within seconds, dark like vultures, circling. Closing in fast, they didn't have long. She reached the control panel and placed her hand on it. The tower woke up with a soft hum, screens lighting up. Data flowing through old wires like blood returning to cold veins. Jace stood by her, keeping watch as she connected the crystal. She moved quickly now, fingers dancing over buttons and switches. "This will send it everywhere," she said, "to every ship, every planet, every screen." Jace looked up as the enemy ships hovered closer. Weapons locked, he smiled weakly. "Let's make history then." The crystal glowed brighter, and suddenly, the air around them shimmered. Holograms exploded out from the tower edges of the past, of humans and her kind working together, building together, even laughing. The galaxy was watching. She stood in the center of it all, arms raised, her voice strong as she spoke in 100 languages. "Remember who we are," she said. "Remember what we once were." The enemy ships didn't fire, not yet. They paused, confused, watching the truth unfold across every corner of space. But someone high above gave the order anyway. One ship charged its cannon and fired directly at the tower. Jace saw it before she did. He moved without thinking, throwing himself between her and the blast. The explosion hit him square in the back. Lifting him off the ground and slamming him into the dirt, she screamed, catching him before he fell. Blood poured from his side, and his breath was shallow. "Why?" she cried, her voice cracking. He smiled weakly. "You were my last hope," he whispered. "Now let me be yours." She held him tightly, her tears glowing as they hit his chest. The broadcast continued behind them, unstoppable now, the whole galaxy watched a human give everything again, just like he did all those years ago. Then, she did something no one expected. She pulled the crystal from her armor and pressed it against Jace's chest. It melted into him, glowing bright, and his body lit with blue light. She whispered ancient words, words no human had heard. In 1,000 years, the light spread through him, healing, changing, awakening something forgotten in his blood. His eyes opened wide, now glowing like hers. He gasped for air, then breathed deeply. Alive again, changed forever. The enemy ships turned and left. One by one, there was no need to fight anymore. The message had already reached everyone. And in their hearts, they remembered kindness, sacrifice. Unity was not weakness. It was strength. Years passed, and peace slowly returned. The girl became a leader, a symbol of hope, but she never stood alone. Beside her walked the man who gave his last food to a child, now reborn not just by alien power, but by something far older. True connection. One quiet morning, a knock came at their door. She opened it and found a child standing there, holding a silver food bar. "I don't have much," the little one said. "But you look hungry," and both of them smiled, because they knew the story would begin again.